my God, you have a sub. Jokes. I mean, everything is awesome because everyone is learning. Yes. So I know I'm not there and you probably shed a few tears. And that's okay. We just need to like accept our feelings. But while we're accepting our feelings, we're also going to learn about feelings. What kind of feelings? I don't know. Feelings you get in your muscles, probably. So let's begin. So I mentioned that our objectives for today, which is 14th, right, was 1.2.1 and 2.2.4, but I didn't get a chance to go over it with ninth period. So I'm going to real quick run through these, and we're going to talk about it so that my seventh. What? Hello? Oh, the room is great. Thanks so much. Okay. The Marriott, they love me. They wanted to make sure everything was okay. Yay. So, aha, types of muscle. That's the first thing that the 1.2.1 talks about was types of muscle. Smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, skeletal muscle. Know it, love it, learn it. You're going to need to be able to know what the different types of muscle looks like. And you're going to want to make sure that you understand both cardiac and skeletal muscle have that like a little striped appearance, but they're very different. And they are denoted in terms of their difference in being voluntary and involuntary. So we'll get into what that means in a second. Now, fun fact is that the muscles of your body make up about 40 to 50% of your body's weight. But if you are bodybuilding or you're bulking or you have very, very small amount of body fat percentage, then you're going to see a higher number should you go and do like, I don't know, hydrostatic weighing or something. All right, so let's take a look at our skeletal muscle. So the skeletal muscle is the one that we are going to be focused on the most because those are the muscles that connect to your bone, and they're the ones that are primarily responsible for moving, like as in moving your limbs. So the striated appearance is important. That's actually going to become even more important during the next activity that you guys are going to do today, where you literally learn like what are all of these things that you see in the picture, right? They get their stripes from these cool bandy things, right? They're essentially little proteins and they like crawl along each other when a muscle contracts, right? So the muscles at like its normal length and then boop, 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 it contracts and look, it got shorter, right? And it also gets thicker. See? Yeah, I know. So that's how that happens. It's all made up of protein. So when people say things like, oh, you want to build muscle, you got to eat protein, they are not lying to you. Okay. Skeletal muscle has tendons, and the tendons attach at an origin and insertion point, right? So they're going to attach to two different bones. And that is definitely very important to know when you start looking at origin and insertion points, which you had a little bit for homework last night. So the main function is to move the skeleton, hence the name skeletal muscle. Also, I forgot to mention this one, the skeletal muscle is voluntary, right? So that means that I choose to move my skeletal muscle, right? So like I am making a conscious life choice right now by making that movement. I thought about it and well, not very long, right? And then I made it happen. That is a voluntary movement. We're going to see in the next couple slides that not all muscle movements are voluntary, and that's probably really good. Cardiac muscle, for example, found in the heart, right? Great. It does a really important job pumping blood throughout your entire body, making sure you don't die. It's also striated just like skeletal muscle, except it is involuntary. That's important. Involuntary means that you don't have to consciously think about it in order for it to contract. This is great news because otherwise you would be spending your entire day going beep, 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 beep. And then if you got distracted by like a squirrel or a text message or something like that, you die. So it's a good thing that this is an involuntary muscle. You do not have to consciously think about contracting it. Ooh. There we go, smooth muscle. Smooth muscle is the same. Smooth muscle is also involuntary, and it is characterized by its smooth appearance. It's not striated. This is also good news because smooth muscle is going to line your blood vessels and your internal organs. You're going to see a lot of smooth muscle when we do the digestive system because there's smooth muscle that lines the stomach, for example, right? And you don't have to consciously tell your stomach to start churning your food. It just does it automatically, which is lovely, a very nice feature. So smooth muscle, also involuntary. We're thinking about like lining the internal organs. Smooth muscle and cardiac muscle, we're going to get into in more detail when we go into units like nutrition and cardiovascular health. We're not there now, so we're going to focus on skeletal muscles and their unique abilities. Okay, so this is the 4 main functions of the muscle, like all muscles in general, right? And you need to know when I give you these specific examples of how they do these special jobs, you need to be able to cite those because remember on your syllabus, it says outline, right? You're gonna have to outline these different types of muscle. Outline means give me the life and times of the skeletal muscle, right? So you're gonna have to have all of those little details. You're welcome. So number 1 is body movement. So body movement occurs through interactions of skeletal muscles, bones, and joints. Skeletal muscles are going to contract, and when they contract, they shrink, right? And they're going to bring those bones together that surround the joint, right? So like my bicep, as intimidating as it is, right? My bicep originates near the humerus, right? And attaches over here, right? In the forearm. So when it shrinks, when it contracts, it brings the forearm closer to the humerus, right? So great. What you want to know, so like the 2 articulating bones, for example, here would be the radius, ulna, and the humerus, right? So the 2 articulating bones travel around the joint, there we go, during contraction, and that can only be made possible by skeletal muscle. Here's the deal with skeletal muscle. You need to know this. You need to learn it. You need to love it and commit it to your memory. Muscles do not push. They only pull. Only pull. Only pull, they don't push, right? So repeat that to yourself many, many, many times because a lot of people think like, well, I can push something, right? Like I can exert a force on something by pushing it. So that means my muscles can push. No, no. You are like a marionette. You are your muscles, or your bones rather, are like the Kermit of your living self, right? The muscles are like the strings on the top of the marionette. The strings can pull, right? And they can let go. So like sometimes they'll pull on one side and let go on the other side, right? And that's what moves the little Muppet, right? So your bones, your skeleton is a big Muppet. And your muscles are moving it around, right? And they only do that by pulling, no pushing. Muscles don't push, they only pull. Okay, so next, transportation of substances. This applies to all of the different types of muscle. So transportation of substances, cardiac muscle, easy, it's transporting blood. Smooth muscle, we know that a whole lot of the smooth muscle is going to be in our digestive tract. So we know what that's doing. It's moving nutrients, right? Now we have our skeletal muscle. And it's like, okay, isn't that just moving the body? Right? It's also transporting substances because skeletal muscle, when it contracts, right? Running all through the skeletal muscle, you've got veins and arteries. Arteries are coming into the skeletal muscle, sprinkling like a little tooth fairy of oxygen, oxygenated blood. Then the old blood, right, has to come back up to the heart, and it does that through the vein, right? And we'll get into that in way more detail when we do the cardiovascular system. But for now, what I want you to understand is that there's blood in the veins and it has to get back up to the heart. So how's it going to do that? Because that's moving up against gravity, right? That's hard to do. So every time you move, your skeletal muscles, when they contract and they shrink, they press on the veins that are hanging out around those skeletal muscles. They press on the veins, right? Because they're squishing together and it sort of squeezes the blood back up towards your head, right? Now, if you are into bodybuilding, you're probably pretty well aware of this phenomenon because you get all psyched when you see you've been lifting for a while and you can see the veins pop. It's like, what? Right? I know, very, very impressive. So that's why you see those veins pop. Also, with people who are really, really well conditioned, right? That vein that you see like right in the anterior head of the deltoid, right? You can see this vein that is almost like permanently there, right? And that's because it's being squeezed all the time because your muscles are just huge. Congratulations. Okay. So transportation of substances, you want to know which muscles are transporting what substances and how they are doing it, right? The cardiac and the smooth muscle being the most obvious of the two. Okay, posture and stabilization. Postural muscles are contracting all the time, right? You just don't see it because it's not necessarily moving two bones around a joint. The best example of this is you not having your face fall on the computer as you watch this, right? You have muscles in the back of your neck that are contracting, right? They're pulling back and they're allowing your head to stay upright, right? Which sometimes happens in class too. Sometimes it doesn't. I try not to take it personally, right? But here you are, your muscles are contracted in the back and your head is lifted up. A very interesting fact that you can put in there on your IB exam or, my exam when you're trying to tell me that you know something really well, right, is that those muscles develop only like a little bit later after birth. So like 3 months old is when a baby can actually start picking its head up, right? That's why when you see an infant, right, or you're holding like a really, really tiny baby, you have to support their head, right? Those muscles in the neck aren't developed yet. So if you were to hold them without supporting their heads, right, which is very dangerous, please don't try this at home, right, their head would plop forward, okay? So that's just an interesting little tidbit that you may find helpful when you're outlining the life and times of posture and stabilization muscles. Okay, so lastly, with the four main functions of the muscle, you have body heat. When the muscles contract, they are pumping out heat, and it doesn't matter if it's voluntary or involuntary, right? So voluntary makes a whole lot of sense. Like, well, I'm running and it's hot. I get hot when I run because I'm sweating, right? That all makes sense. What is a little bit underrated, right? What a lot of people don't know about is that even your smooth muscle, like when you're digesting your food and your smooth muscles working, your body temperature increases. And actually, if you take the thermo cameras, which we're going to play with probably on Friday, and you eat a sandwich, we can do a time-lapse video and watch that heat that's concentrated in your core, because that's where your intestines are working, right? It will radiate out the rest of your body. So that's pretty cool. And now you have something to look forward to. So stay tuned, friends, because this was just video one. You lucky, lucky guys.